hypnotic fluid winds its way through the minds of our friends. They shall return to serve, happy and content to have us rule over them.
Inside the world of real-life vampires in New Orleans and Atlanta. Hey, what's up, world? I came across this article that I just had to share with you all. Of course, it's a CNN article. No, I am not browsing CNN for newsworthy articles. I actually came across this article on another website that shares news from like all over the place. And it had like this title. It was like real life vampires or vampires are real. It was kind of like a clickbaity title. So I clicked it and I was like, all right, I clicked and I was brought to this article here. And when I saw it, I was like, oh man, they got me. You know, they lured me in. But I was like, you know what? I want to read this article. Something told me, read this fucking article. So I was like, all right, I'll read this fucking article. And after I read this article, I realized that I can make a video on this article would allow me to say some things about certain protected groups that I'm not really otherwise allowed to say. So I figure I'm like, hey, you know what? Let me make a video and talk about these vampires before these vampires become another protected group. So let's get right into this. Okay, so CNN. When Maven Lore was being fitted for his first set of fangs, a switch within him flipped on. Something just came to the surface, and everything felt right for once in my life, he said. I had this notion that there was more to it than just pointy teeth. Yeah, of course. He didn't know what to call the feeling at the time, or that it would lead him from New York to New Orleans, but he knows now that it was an awakening, his first taste of life as a vampire. No, it wasn't an awakening. It's an ego trip. He put on these teeth and he started to ego trip. His ego had this new identity, this new awesome identity that wasn't his average Joe identity, whatever loser he was before he became a vampire. His ego no longer had to identify with that shitty existence. And him being able to put on these pointy teeth allowed him to basically put on a uniform, and his ego then began to identify with this uniform. And this is really the feeling that he got. And I'm going to be talking more about this in a second. I'm going to be actually relating it to a song that was one of my favorite songs as a kid. And, I guess you guys being able to see one of my favorite songs as a kid will give you a little insight into my mind and, how I became who I am today. But anyway, let's read more of this guy's ego tripping. Okay, so Lore found belonging in New Orleans and never left. Now, a crafter of bespoke acrylic fangs himself, he's risen up to the reluctantly accepted role of king of the Big Easy's vampire court. Oh man, see what I mean? So like, you see here, before he was this loser, he wasn't this, king of the Big Easy's vampire court. Before, he didn't have belonging. He didn't have this uniform that people would accept. Once he puts on this uniform, he gets belonging. He now has a little crowd that he can, rise in the ranks amongst. So anyway, let's keep reading this. Being a part of the vampire court of New Orleans is about all of us coming up together. A victory for one person is a victory for all of us, he said. We're all just kind of sink or swim together. Basically a bunch of socialist parasites. That's kind of what it sounds like to me. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe I could just be wrong, maybe I could be prejudicial, maybe it's just some biases that I have that make me say that. Who knows, maybe they could have this like awesome community where they all have this hive mind and they all really do come up together. I doubt it, but whatever. So human vampires live, and they're fairly far from the fictional creatures we recognize. No, they're not human vampires, they're idiots, okay? These people are just ego tripping. They don't realize that they're ego tripping, then they're like, yeah, we're vampires. No, you're sociopaths who who are looking for social acceptance. That's what's really going on here. And you attaching the name vampire to yourself allows you to escape reality. So, and of course they want to escape reality because their ego cannot handle it. They've just been so messed up, they cannot face that reality. They cannot negotiate that reality. They cannot come to terms with it. They cannot grasp real reality. So they have to escape into these fantasy realities of being a vampire. So, their interpretations of vampirism vary widely. Many of them feed off of energy or sexual encounters, but feeding habits and fangs are just the trappings of a community that is as diverse as it is misunderstood by non-vampires. You may not even know they're a vampire at all, at least not if you're searching for the stereotypical tip-offs. There are no restrictions for self-identifying vampires. They're not bound to nocturnal life or required to worship fictional vampires. The vampires, sometimes spelled vampires, of course they have to create their own spelling for vampires to make themselves feel special or to differentiate themselves. So the vampires, sometimes spelled vampires of today, are in essence people from different backgrounds with a common goal: belonging, who have found community with their fellow vampires. Living as a vampire is a subversive choice, a proud rejection of social norms, and in that way, it's an empowering way to live, said John Edgar Browning, a professor of liberal arts at the Savannah College of Arts and Design, who has spent years studying vampire communities in New Orleans and Buffalo, New York. Okay, so yeah, this guy's, I agree. It's all about wanting to belong, because once again, they're weak-minded, they cannot exist as individuals. This is largely the product of our education system, not just our education system, but a lot of things in this system that push people to be sociopathic. We need to have some sort of sense of belonging, and what happens is when we feel like we don't belong in reality, we invent new realities in which we feel like we belong in. And oftentimes, these new realities that people invent are antisocial to a degree, because these realities, they're created because of a rejection of the current existing social reality, the current existing social paradigm. So, of course the vampires are proud of rejection of social norms. They need to feel that pride for their ego. Because if not, if they're if they're trying to live up to their social norms, then their ego feels incompetent, or it feels less, or it feels attacked. So this is why these countercultures really pop up. So anyway, let's continue though. Human vampires make accessible the infinite potential that exists for exposing and unfixing the repressive and oppressive categories out of which marginalization is born. Wow, that's some real sophistry here. Okay, this is just sophistry. It's bullshit. It really, when you analyze this, it means absolutely nothing, because it's made up entirely of straw men and assumptions and baseless assertions. So there is no repressive and oppressive categories that create marginalization. Okay, this idea, oh yes, society has created these categories, and these categories is what is marginalizing us. No, that's not what it is at all. These categories, they exist for relatively rational reasons. A lot of these categories, they exist for very real reasons. But these people, these vampires, these social justice warriors, these other people who like to dress up in a uniform, they like to blame these categories for their own faults, for their own problems. They're like, oh no, the problem isn't me. The problem isn't that I'm lazy and I'm unwilling to improve on myself. No, the problem isn't me. The problem isn't my own actions. The problem is the existence of these categories. And it's like, these people, they want to get rid of standards. And these categories are a sort of standard, or a sort of, they represent these standards, these categories. So they want to do away with all of these standards, and that's actually what these people are doing mentally. They're mentally doing this, and of course, people like CNN and these other people make it like they're doing something courageous. Like, yeah, these vampires, they're actually making accessible the infinite potential that exists for exposing and unfixing the repressive and oppressive categories. I mean, it's fucking nonsense. And it's crazy that people will read sentences like this and they'll be like, oh yeah, I mean, what a great writer. It's like, no, he's just a bullshit artist. What a great bullshit artist. And that's exactly why he says, like, right after that, what's connected to that is, so in a way, these vampires are therapeutic for us. And it's like, yeah, of course, this is like a type of therapy where they're having their erroneous beliefs or their delusions confirmed. Like, they're all getting this confirmation from each other by having this group where it's like, yeah, we all see this. And, it's kind of unhealthy because it's kind of like, it's almost like Alcoholics Anonymous, but instead the alcoholics are encouraging their alcoholism, and they're saying like, yeah, we're doing this because we're just so marginalized, and this is our escape. We're not going to identify as alcoholics. These people are identifying as vampires. I'm not sure if that's a good analogy, or maybe I screwed up that analogy. But it's not a healthy therapy. If a person goes to a therapy and they're just like having confirmation on the delusions or on the thoughts that drive them into their irrational actions, it's just going to drive more irrational actions. It's just going to drive them further and further into that extreme. Like, this is not healthy therapy. Like, yeah, it's going to feel therapeutic. It's going to feel that way. It's going to make them feel good, and they'll mistake that for therapy. And, people do this very same thing with music. Music, I should make a video on music. But music, it comes from the word muse, and like a muse is like an influence. And music, it doesn't just influence us, it actually is a type of therapy that we listen to sort of confirm our thoughts and our lifestyle choices. You don't hear gangster rappers or these hardcore criminals or these like gang members listening to soft stuff that is about love and not betraying your fellow person. No, they listen to songs that are about killing and robbing and raping, or not raping, but at least womanizing in some way. And they get down with that stuff, at least publicly, because it makes them feel good, because it's confirming their beliefs in a lot of ways. And of course, I would have to elaborate on that more. But this is not healthy. Okay, this is not healthy at all. So anyway, CNN spoke to two giants of their respective communities, Lore of New Orleans and Marticus, the co-founder of the Atlanta Vampire Alliance, about their lives, their joys, and the misconceptions about vampirism they'd like to permanently put to rest. Anyway, searching for families, finding vampires, nonsense. This is the guy right here, you can tell, total sociopath, does a lot to sell his image to people. These people, they basically turn themselves into billboards. They're very symbol-minded. Not simple-minded, like, simple, but symbol-minded, like symbols. They like to use symbols to portray themselves or to find meaning in themselves. Because they have no real meaning themselves, so they have to try to affix meaning to themselves through these symbols. And, through like the style of dress, through like, the necklace, I'm sure it has a ridiculous pendant on it, through the mustache or the facial hair, like, the style of the facial hair. And of course the fangs, because these people wear fangs too, Anyway, I'm going to just scroll through the article. I don't think there's much else here. If you guys want to read more of this article, you can. I now want to reveal to you guys the song that I think about every time I see people like this. Every time I see people wearing a uniform and trying to dodge reality. And it's this mindless self-indulgent song that's titled, "You'll Rebel to Anything as Long as It's Not Challenging." And let me just read the lyrics here, okay? You don't mean it. You need a uniform so you won't be ignored. You are affected, and so you're accepted. It's time you invested in a bottle of poison, so we don't have to hear about you bitching and moaning. You think you could afford a fucking bottle of aspirin. Boo fucking who, you're not the only one whose life's a piece of shit. And yet miraculously, somehow we all seem to deal with it. Did anybody think that you would really seriously slit your wrist? In fact, I think that everybody thinks you're seriously full of shit. You think you're saying something relevant as you connect the dots. You never realize you have to get in line to suck a cock. You're telling me that 50 million fans are never wrong. I'm telling you that 50 million fans are fucking morons. So, this is just a song that, in my teenage years, in my early teenage years, I'd say when I was around, like, sometime between 10, 11, or 12, sometime around there, this song became, like, a major favorite of mine. And it definitely helped keep me grounded and helped me avoid these sociopathic little groups that people just love to find themselves in. But anyway, I'm going to finish the video here. I'll catch you all in my next video. Actually, for those of you who are on YouTube, I am going to be uploading a discussion that I had with another channel on BitChute, this channel Waking the Future. So I'm going to be uploading my discussion with Pat, and it's only going to be uploaded to BitChute and Odyssey, because I know for a fact if I upload it to YouTube, I'll be hit with a strike. So after I upload this video, maybe I'll upload the video tomorrow, maybe I'll upload the video later tonight, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, I'll see you all in good time. You all take care of yourselves. Don't lose hope, but also don't fall into false hope. If you're gonna hope, make sure that hope is fucking real, because the only thing worse than no hope is false hope.
Well, you can't fight City Hall.
Oh, we'll see about that. City Hall knows karate.